talking about Dynamics GP upgrades. And we're going to break it down into a few sections. Right now we have everybody muted, and so this way we can go through it. And then if we have time at the end, we'll try to take some questions, or if you have questions, just email us, and we'll have that information up at the end as well. The sections we're going to go over is, first we're going to go over why to upgrade. We're going to go over the system discovery process, what technical requirements are needed to upgrade, the paths that you need to do to get to newer versions, any third parties that you may have that need to be upgraded as well, any customizations that you may have. We'll go over the various reporting options. We'll go over also different ways that other programs integrate with GP, and the training that is needed. We'll cover a brief overview of the training and user acceptance training, and that's going to be people that have your users go through the system and review it during the upgrade process. And what to expect when you go live. What happens? Does your system go down? What's the transition? So forth. And then any post-upgrade support that we will offer. And next we're going to delve into, I got Jerry here, is going to delve into why to upgrade.
All right, thanks, John. So first of all, what's the point of even upgrading at all? So we're going to talk about some of the advantages and why you want to stay current. First and foremost, new versions, the biggest change in the new versions is they add on new features, new functionality that you don't have in the current versions. Just to throw quick ones out there, workflow was a big one they added recently. There's a lot of enhancements to financials, distribution and supply chain enhancements, human resource, payroll. So they just keep kind of adding on new modules, new functionality that you don't have to more expand what you can manage with this ERP program. Obviously, new versions are going to come out with security fixes, bug fixes. As the program gets more mature, they're going to try to eliminate all these bugs they find and the issues that come up. Just make it a more refined and stable product over the years. Okay, so it's got a stable base, and they're going to keep on continuing to make it more reliable. So one of the big important pieces of staying current with your licensing is Microsoft support. So when you do pay for licensing, it entitles you to Microsoft support. So if we come into any issues, Microsoft's going to have our back to come in and help us try to figure those out and troubleshoot. So if you're on an old version, you haven't upgraded in a while, that support for that version actually ends. So, for example, GP 2010, the extended support ended, it ended in 2010, last year. Some other versions, old ended are going to end more recently. So basically, you want to stay current to keep on keep Microsoft support. If you're not upgrading, you're paying for licensing to have the product, but there's not going to be any recourse if we run into issues. We're not going to be able to go to Microsoft for support. Okay, so we definitely want to stay on a current version, otherwise you're just kind of throwing away money. So in general, the program gets updated, with best accounting practices in mind. The laws change. This is some things that get incorporated into the product, into payroll, taxes. Business practices and laws change. Okay, so a particular version of the GP is going to become less consistent with those best practices as it gets older. So you want to try to stay as consistent as you can. Okay. Some of the reporting that's built into GP is going to get updated. See a lot of changes, new functionality, expanded reporting, and as I alluded to before, a lot of changes in payroll is clients that use GP for payroll are going to be, it's going to be a lot more critical for them to stay current and stay on top of these new versions. Okay, so that's it. So, essentially we want to go over, we're going to talk about, so when we talk about upgrade, that's the next slide. So, all right, so basically I went over the main things. So new features, bug fixes, you want to stay current with Microsoft support, and best accounting practices. So this is going to lead us into, once you decided to take advantage of all of these new products, it can kind of lead us into planning it out and system discovery, which is our next step, which I'll hand over to John for that.
Okay, so the first process that we do is when one of our customers is interested in an upgrade, we'll arrange to get access to their system, and we'll go through their system and perform a system discovery. And what we like to do is, if they're we would want to get on the SQL server to look at different information on the SQL server, but we will also want to get on the workstations or the clients that have all the different applications running, all the third parties and any customizations. We need to go through those to make sure that we catch everything. So yeah, and one of the things is with system access, we'll need to, if it's just going to be us connecting to you, usually we'll use like a team viewer and walk through it, with maybe IT, accounting, maybe one person from each piece, go through with them, and then some of it we can just do on our own, but we like to just go through it because we'll be able to find things that we may not find in on this particular system. So so we're going to look for that. We're going to look at any of the third parties that you have. Third parties are things like SmartList Builder, McCorma, Micker, and Rockdude's fleet of programs. So we'll go through all that, and that's what's within your GP system. But there's also going to be customizations. So depending on, not every time, but many customers have customizations. So there may be customs written by ourselves or written by your team or some other team, and we want to go through those to make sure that we catch all that, and we need that information for the upgrade to make sure things are compatible. In the discovery, we will not impact anything on the system, so everybody can work as usual. There's no actual work in the system in GP itself. We may want to go into GP and look at certain things, but there's nothing that gets updated, and people have full access to the system while we're doing that. A typical discovery takes about 2 hours, usually about an hour, maybe an hour, and a little bit better than an hour on the server, and then less time on the workstation. And if there's multiple workstations that have different programs installed, we'll want to see each workstation. We also, when we get on, we want to have access to SQL so we can get the information on the database sizes, because that's a really good indication for us on how long the upgrade process is going to take. If you have many companies, large databases, they can take a lot of time. If you have small, one company, small databases, it takes a lot less time. So we quote on the time that we spend on that, and that would have a good indication as to how much time we're gonna it would take to do the upgrade. And we do the third party, again, the third party ISV products, we get them, customizations, integrations, also flush out your environment. So some people have the client on workstations where other people will have it on terminal servers or Citrix servers, or they may be in the cloud. So there's different environments, so we have to flush that out. And then there's sometimes a combination of those environments. Some people have local clients on the workstation and other clients that use a terminal server. And then we'll make sure that everything we see is compatible. And the other thing is to make sure that you're current on your enhancements with GP. That's necessary because we can't get the keys for the upgrade unless you're current. And then we'll do a little bit of a project plan. Well, after we do the discovery, about a week later, we'll have a quote set up, and we'll mail that quote out to you. And also during the discovery, we'll do a little project planning, like what we need to do, when it needs to be done, and kind of high-level timeline on the whole process. I'm going to jump over to Jerry now on the technical requirements.
All right, thanks, John. So once we have a good idea of your current system and your current hardware, we can make a plan to upgrade and talk about hardware requirements for the new system. In a lot of cases, if you're not doing a major upgrade or only upgrading a version or two, we may be just able to do an in-place upgrade where we use the existing SQL Server and SQL database instance. But in a lot of cases, we will need to upgrade the operating system and/or SQL Server. So we're going to, when we're talking about technical requirements and planning for this new build, we're going to look at hardware resources, right? So we're going to look at the number of companies you have, the number of databases, the sizes of those databases. Some of our clients have databases that are 20, 30 gigabytes or larger. So that's something we definitely have to take into consideration when this updated hardware is running the new environment. Number of clients you have, okay, number of users connecting to the system simultaneously. When we talked about, when Don talked about system discovery, we were talking about your current configuration of local and Citrix servers or terminal servers, and we want to, plan that going forward as well. So if we're going to stick with that kind of setup, we're going to make any changes there. What kind of requirements those servers are going to need. So servers for, so resources for the application servers, how many people are going to be connecting to it, how many third-party applications do we have besides the core of GP. So we have to do a lot of calculations depending on the users, the databases, software, to try to come up with a reasonable technical hardware recommendation. Okay, some other considerations are you might need a web server. Okay, if you've got some third parties or the GP web client that leverage online functionality. Okay, in that case we're going to need we like to have a dedicated web server, with a certificate. So we'll talk about resources for web server as well. We'll have to plan out the SQL versions when we're doing an upgrade. Certain versions of GP are only compatible with certain versions of SQL. So if we're on a very old version, we have to go through several different versions of GP. We also have to coordinate the interim versions of SQL Server along with that. So it's kind of a complicated dance where only certain versions of GP will only work with certain SQLs. So we have to carefully do that in a carefully calculated sequence to make sure we get that right and make sure everything's supported all the way through that upgrade path. Same thing with the operating systems. Some versions of SQL only work on certain operating systems or work better on some, so we have to sometimes make a transition. A lot of times an upgrade is also a migration. There's a lot of overlap there, so we'll, in a lot of cases, be setting up the new environment in a test server. And I think in most cases, we end up usually promoting that test server to live when we do the go live, but there's lots of different techniques we can do and ways we can plan for that go live process. So besides the SQL versions, the operating systems, the different resources we're going to need, we also have to think about Office versions. Certain Office Microsoft Office versions are only compatible with a few different versions of GP, so that's another consideration. So When we're doing this system discovery, the technical requirements and planning is a big part of that. We just want to make sure we have all our ducks in a row, so there's no surprises. We have everything we need when we get ready. All the hardware is going to be ordered, to the ideal specifications that we want, and so that we have no, obstacles in our way when we're ready to go move on to the actual upgrade process, which I will let John describe in a little bit more detail.
Okay, yeah, the upgrade process, one of the things that will flush out in the discovery, depending on what version you're currently on in GP, typically you can only jump one version per upgrade. So if you're on, say, GP 10, we would have to bring you first. We could skip GP 2010, so we could go from GP 10 to GP 2013, and then from 2013 we could skip 2015 and go to 2016, and then from 2016 we could bring you to the latest version, GP 2018. So there's some steps there, and also SQL comes into play here also, because GP 2013 will work on certain SQL versions, where 2016 and 2018 work on other SQL versions. So in some cases, we may have to have an interim server with a different version of SQL on it to do this interim upgrade. And there's some different ways that we get around that. In worst case scenarios, we can bring it down into our environment and do that interim, but it's just very time consuming to get the data transferred over the internet, so that takes up a lot of time. So we typically do not do that, but that is an option. One of the other things that we want to pay attention to is there are certain things that we have to do going from one version to another that we have to pay attention to. One of the examples would be OLE notes. So if you're on a version of GP10 or 2010, and you've been using OLE notes, which are linked notes. So if you're in a GP window and you click on the note on one of the fields or on the window itself, and you link a note, like link maybe a Word document or an Excel document, if you do that, then we would need to do an upgrade process of those notes as well, and that's a migration. Another thing is the migration of the financial program. We'll go into that a little bit later. So those are the things that we have to consider, and then also the scheduling. We want to make sure that the scheduling of this works within the framework of what you guys are doing. During the test upgrade, there's no impact to the current system, so people can work, without any hindrance during the test upgrade, because it's done in a completely different environment, so it doesn't affect the production. And then I'm going to hand this off to Jerry now for third parties.
Thanks, John. I just want to mention one quick thing I forgot to mention during the system discovery, which is a question that Kathy just brought up here. We don't charge for the discovery process. We basically offer you a quote. The quote process is free. If we do have to do excessive meetings and go meeting after meeting for a couple of weeks, and set up a lot of planning and things like that, we might get into a little bit of billing, but we will talk to you about that first. But generally, we include the discovery process, a few hours for that, and the quote at no cost. But again, if there's anything additional we have to go through, any additional work, research that you request from us, there may be a small charge for that depending. Okay. So now to talk about third parties, this is a big variable. So some clients don't have any third parties; they just have vanilla GP. A lot of a lot of our clients have multiple third parties, so we have to take that into consideration. These third parties, we have to consider their compatibility with GP, their intercompatibility. Sometimes they can have problems with each other. So we have to consider all that. So part of the upgrade is to bring in all these vendors, make sure the licensing is all current, make sure that all these products are compatible with target versions that we're going to be upgrading to. Make sure that the scheduling works. For most third parties, we just install that and work it into our upgrade. There are some more complicated third parties that, for example, will have to go out to a web server, so they might have to reach out to the vendor. Some examples of that might be like eRecruit or Green Shades. These are products that have to go out to a web server at the vendor and communicate with that. So when we do an upgrade, we have to bring them in and make sure that we can coordinate with them so they can make that cut over when we go live and make sure we're all on the same page. Okay, so basically, just have to make sure we consider all these things, make sure they're compatible, make sure they're on board with the licensing, make sure that it's scheduled. Now just to give you an example of some of the easier ones that are very popular, Smart List Builder, McCorma, a lot of the Rockton products, Collections Management, Smart Fill is another Rockton product. These are examples of products, the third-party products that are very simple to upgrade. So we just basically install a file. It usually takes less than an hour or so to update these products. We do some table updates. Generally, those are very quick. We're very comfortable with them. Some products that are a little bit more complicated, products like Ariat, Notice, Smart Connect, Project Cost, MEM, Multi-Entity Management, eRecruit. These are more intricate systems. They're more complicated implementations to upgrade, a lot more things to consider. We run into a lot more issues with these products. They're going to require a lot more testing. They're just much more complex products with a lot more functionality, a lot more things to consider, and a lot more things to watch out for. So, the third parties are vary greatly, but that's something that, again, we have to consider and work all this into our upgrade project as well. So now third parties are products from vendors that are kind of prepackaged to solve a problem. And next, John is going to talk about customizations, which is what our developers do to actually go in and make some more core changes to the product for you. So, John, I'll let you take it from there.
Okay, thanks, Jer. So customization. So when we talk about third-party products, those third-party products are built to work within the framework of GP, and they work very closely with Great Plains so that they're compatible. Every once in a while, a company might come across something that they need for their business process, and there's not a third party out there that does that specifically. Or the third party is a lot more robust, and you only need one piece of that. So then we have a development department that will determine what needs to be done, what you're trying to accomplish, and then they'll create a custom that's developed to integrate with GP, but it is a custom outside of GP. It will most of the times it will function within GP. The functionality, the user interface would be within GP, but it's effectively a custom that's written that is not something to do with a third party. In some cases, there's customizations by third parties. One example of that would be a custom that I recently worked with McCorma. One of our customers wanted the McCorma Micker, which is a check printing software to print the Micker line. They wanted to add different fields that aren't normally available for checks. So we had a custom made by McCorma themselves, and we had to make sure in the upgrade that they were able to make it compatible with the new version. So when there is a custom, we have to reach out to the development team, or we have to reach out to a third party or whoever writes the custom. And there's a process of, there's some time involved there for them to update that custom and make it compatible. And then we also have to schedule the custom, any customization, schedule it and make sure that those customs are working properly. And then there's some integrations. Sometimes we have to consider products that integrate with GP. There's a number of products that are used to integrate data from other programs or other places to bring that information into GP. So we have to make sure that those are also compatible and may need to be updated to be compatible with the newer version. So just kind of a high level, you have GP, your core product, and then to add functionality, GP has allowed companies to write third-party products that integrate with GP. So you'll have third-party products depending on your need. And then on top of that, you may have customizations, integrations. So those are the areas that get touched by the upgrade process. The next.
I just want to make a point about customizations too, John. One point about third parties and how they're different from customizations is third parties, when you license that product, you pay for the licensing up front, and usually you pay a yearly maintenance cost. With customizations that Cal would do for you, if there's something that we did, if there's only a small piece of that third party that you needed and we were able to implement that for you, we would just charge you up front for the time it took us to code that, and there'd be no ongoing licensing costs. So that's something to think about too, is the Cal development team only needs to upgrade really if there's an upgrade to make it compatible with that new version. But once you have any of those Cal customizations, those are pretty much yours, and you don't have to pay any maintenance on it. If we do need to support it, and there's support hours in there for that, there may be some time, but just want to make the point that there's no licensing cost like there is with third parties.
Okay, and now I'm going to hand this over to Jerry to talk about the reporting options.
Okay, so there's a lot of different reporting options in GP. I'll go over some of the main types. So first of all, you've got the reports that are built in the GP, the core GP reports that you run straight from inside GP. Besides that, you've got some ancillary reports like SSRS, so SQL reporting engine for reports. You've got the financial tool FRX is an older tool which has now been replaced by Management Reporter for more financial type reporting. There's some Excel reports that can get generated out of GP, which a lot of people love because working in Excel is really easy for a lot of people, so that comes really naturally for people. So in GP, I mentioned the custom GP reports. Those can be modified to your needs. You can make adjustments to those reports with a built-in tool called Report Writer, GP Report Writer. So we can make modifications to those core reports in GP. Those reports, changes get stored in a modified report, a shared modified report dictionary, so all those changes, of course, go out to all the users seamlessly. And some other options we have for reporting in GP would be some Word templates, so making more, leveraging more use of Office in addition to Excel. We can do some Word templates, generate invoices and some other types of reports like that. So I alluded to before FRX and the successor Management Reporter. So some of our older clients are still using FRX. It's the older tool, especially if you're on GP 10 or GP 2010. So there's a migration process involved for upgrading those clients where we bring those report building blocks and we migrate those into Management Reporter. It's kind of a clunky process. It's difficult, and those reports have to be cleaned up by a financial consultant afterwards because they rarely work properly after a direct conversion. So an FRX migration, if you're using FRX, that's something we're going to look into during our the earlier discovery process we mentioned, because we're going to have to look at how many reports you've got, just how complicated it's going to be to make that conversion. If you don't use FRX, that's great. We'll set up the new version management reporter for you, and you can start taking advantage of that right away. I think that's pretty much all we can go over with reports. I mean, those are the types of reports. So when we do an upgrade, we want to make sure all these reports are going to get upgraded to work in a new version. So any kind of reporting that you're using now, day-to-day or weekly reports or monthly reports, routines you run, you're going to be able to do those in the new version. So we're going to upgrade all those built-in customized, modified reports that we talked about. The Word templates get upgraded. I mentioned the FRX reports get migrated to the newer version. Any of those SSRS SQL reporting reports, sometimes those need a developer to look at to get those upgraded and migrated over. All of that's going to get upgraded and tested in the new system. We're certainly going to want to make sure all your tests tie out correctly in the upgraded version. All right, so in addition to reports that you run regularly, integrations are another regular process, integrating to and from the GP system. I want to let John talk about that a little bit.
Okay, Chair. Yeah, so integrations, first of all, what are integrations? Well, the GP application, customers will have other applications that are foreign to GP, but they need to get information into GP from those applications. And it may be journal entries or a different system. It could be maybe a CRM system where they're creating orders or updating customers, and that has to talk to GP. So there's different kind of integrations, and we have to take that into consideration during the upgrade, because those third parties, we have to, anything outside of GP, we have to make sure that they can integrate, that version can still integrate with GP, and they may need changes. Those may need to be updated as well. In GP we have, that comes with GP, well, it doesn't actually come with GP, it's a GP product, but can be purchased. It's the Integration Manager. It's a product to get data, usually data in Excel spreadsheets, and integrate that information into GP. Like I mentioned, it could be, Integration Manager could be bringing journal entries from an Excel spreadsheet into GP. So we have to make sure that those integrations are upgraded, and also we have to consider the Office version, because newer versions of GP require newer versions of Office. So we need to make sure that we're current on the Office versions as well. There's some custom integrations. Cal has one of the examples that we do at Cal is payroll imports. Customer will have a payroll system, and they want to import that data into GP. So we have a payroll integration custom that we use for different customers. There's some third-party applications that are used for integrations. Infinity Integrator, which is a copy and paste, where you can copy data from an Excel spreadsheet and paste it into GP. And that Infinity Integrator allows you to do that in just on every module in GP. Another third party is Smart Connect. We use that pretty heavily with customers. It's a great way to integrate outside programs into GP, even the Excel spreadsheets. They can get automated, where it can be scheduled. It's a pretty robust system. Smart Connect can also be used to integrate with Microsoft CRM and Salesforce. And we also see, although we don't personally use it, but support it, but we have some partners that we use to support Scribe, the Scribe integration, and and Scribe is predominantly used for integrating CRM like Microsoft CRM and Salesforce, and I think that's about it. Yeah, and and all those third parties, we have to consider if they need to be upgraded. Smart Connect can be Infinity Integrator definitely needs to be upgraded for each version. Smart Connect is it has to be upgraded for the current version. Scribe can be used on sometimes different versions, and then also Microsoft CRM and Salesforce. Those products may need to be upgraded to be compatible with the version that you're going to in GP. Next thing is we're going to review training. This is a really important piece, and probably takes the most time in the upgrade. So I'm going to hand that off to Jerry.
All right. So yeah, training is a very important part of the upgrade. So let me just give you a kind of an expectation here. When we upgrade, this new version is going to be a lot of the same of what you're used to. It's going to have a new icon. Some of the buttons are going to be moved around a little bit here and there, but largely it's going to be the same program you're used to. Everybody's going to be able to go in there and do what they do day to day without any changes. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of the new things about these new features are just new functionality, new modules that didn't exist before. So the training that we give with an upgrade is new feature training. Now, there is an abundance of new features. It would take us forever to go over all these new features and dig into them and implement them all. So our training is basically just to talk about what the new features are, to make you aware of them. And then if you think that one of these features is going to be beneficial to you, we can talk about implementing those products and setting up maybe a secondary product or project or phase 2, where we go ahead and actually implement those other features for you. So typically a lot of the clients like to try to schedule some training while they're in the test phase. So with a lot of clients, we try to do the test upgrade first and then a live upgrade just to iron out any issues. So if they can, they'll try to get that training, that new feature training done during the test phase, just so there's no pressure. That way they get a better look at GP, the new version of GP, while they're testing it, so they can play around with it a little bit more and not have to worry about messing up anything in production. So a lot of clients like to do that while they're in test. Probably about an equal number of our clients like to schedule the training after the go live. Sometimes that's on-site, sometimes it's just remote training. For some clients, that makes them feel a little bit more comfortable to have the training when they're actually live with the new product. It can go either way. It really depends on the client and what's going to work for them in that case. So usually we'll try to talk about training at a high level during the initial system discovery and scheduling. We'll talk about how we're going to try to fit that training in, at a high level. And then, yeah, like I said, if you see any features that you do like during that new features, well, now you have them. They've become available to you, so we can talk about implementing those and start to set them up and configuring them and giving your users training on actually putting them into use. Okay, but the new features, I just want to make clear, the new features is really out of scope for an upgrade. So the core upgrade, the thing we're trying to achieve here is basically just to change your version number. At the end of the day, when you're running the new versions, you're going to see a new icon. And like I said before, it's essentially the same. You're doing the same thing with it. It's exactly the same thing. All the users do their same day-to-day job that they did yesterday, and now they're just doing it with a new version number. Now you've got support from Microsoft because now you're on a currently supported version. That's what we're trying to accomplish, and during that time, we're going to give you training to show you the new features that you have. But again, I just want to make clear that those new features are out of scope. This an upgrade project at its core is just to update your existing system and to bring it into a current build. Okay, and from there, I think we can talk about I think this next slide is supposed to say user acceptance testing because this talks about the testing phase and what we go through and expect in there. John.
Okay, yeah. So people ask us, well, what do I test, and can you test for us? And that's unfortunately we don't know what you do day to day. So the best way to test, first of all, just up front is what I usually recommend is at the end of the day, right before the go live, run some trial balances in all your modules. And this way, when we do the go live, you can compare those trial balances. And then you want to make sure that, one point that's really important is that you test printing checks. I mean, it seems simple enough, but you don't want to go live and then find out that your checks aren't lining up, and then we're scrambling to get the checks to line up, and somebody needs to be paid. Those are critical issues, and if we can flesh those out before, it just makes a smooth upgrade. You want to test your reports. A lot of the reports are modified. Some reports exist in different applications. You want to make sure those reports are all working. And you want to also test your integrations. Are you able to test an integration? Make sure that it integrates properly, and try to flush any issues out there. One of the things also that we could consider, and this is usually done, there's different reasons that we do this. Typically, we have to create a different place for testing. So whether it's in your current system, where we create a separate SQL instance where the upgraded databases will live in the same SQL server, or if it's a new system and we upgrade into that new system, those are the two ways that we would test. But if we're gonna, there's certain situations where we may test outside like that, but then when we do decide to go live, that we actually upgrade the current system as it stands right there. And usually we'll do this if it's a very, very small client. Sometimes we'll do an in-place upgrade because it's just it's a small database, goes pretty quick. They don't have third parties. There's not much risk there, but and then in other situations, we may have a customer that has a lot of different systems that are pointing to your current production, and if we move to a new server or a different location, all those connections get broken, and then it's kind of a lot of work to fix all those connections. So sometimes we'll do an in-place upgrade in that situation. And then the user acceptance testing is what we want the users to do is ideally is to do whatever work they currently do in production. It doesn't have to be parallel. It's just, take your day's work, like, you're inputting journal entries, you're creating sales orders, you're, adjusting inventory, whatever you do in a typical day, do that in the new system, in the test system, and make sure everything works the way that it's supposed to. And then it also gives you a chance to see any kind of things that may change, maybe buttons get turned and moved or something like that. So this way, you know that when you go live, you can jump right in. And you definitely want, I just want to touch on the checks again. One of the things you want to do with checks is you want to print your checks on a blank piece of paper, and in the test system, print it to a blank piece of paper, and then take one of your check stocks, one of your checks, and just put the paper over the check and put it up to the light and make sure things line up. You don't have to, ruin good check stock. You can just do it that way. So just that whole thing of, do what you do on a daily basis. If you can get all the users to do that, anything they do, particularly on a monthly basis or an annual basis, great. If they can go through all that, that's going to make for a really smooth upgrade. And the testing, you want to try to get your testing done in a reasonable amount of time. You don't want to start testing and then you get busy and then you have to wait a week and then start testing. We have some customers that are continually testing and stopping and testing and stopping, and in the meantime, a new version gets released. So you want to kind of push that along, that piece along, so that you're on top of it. And typically, what we can do is, depending on the environment, you'll be able to do your testing right, from your workstation. So as you have time, you can go ahead and do your testing, and then, or work, back and forth with, production GP and the testing GP. So this way you can do it as you have time, because, work gets in the way and some things, take priority. So, but you just don't want to lose sight of keeping that ball rolling. Okay, I'm going to pass this over. We're going to talk a little bit about what to expect when we go live.
All right, so the actual production go live event. So just some things to expect. We're going to need a block of time where everybody's out of the system. Typically we like to do this over a weekend. So if, let's say, for example, you close the business at 5 p.m. on a Friday, we'd like to get in there right after that, after the last user's confirmed to log out. Get in there just after 5, start taking those last backups, and start that upgrade right there. Do as much as we can on Friday evening. Keep it going through the weekend. In most cases, that's how we run them, and we have everybody live on the new system on Monday. Monday morning, if they've got a client workstation environment, first thing on Monday, we'll usually work with your internal IT to get those workstations updated first thing, so people can sign in and start using the new system. In some cases, we update the workstations during tests, so it's even a quicker transition during the go live. But we'll have to schedule that beforehand. But yeah, so we need to have everybody log out at the close of business. If we think we might be able to do it on a weeknight, sometimes we can schedule it, just do it on a regular weeknight and have them in the next business day. But a lot of our clients with more companies, bigger database sizes, or a lot of third parties, more complexity, we're going to try to schedule that for the weekend just so we have a little bit more, buffer in case we do run into any issues, a little bit more time to troubleshoot and get everything working. So, on Friday, let's say, for example, we're going to do it on a Friday. We're going to expect everybody to log out, of course, by 5. We're going to want anybody to have any open batches, anything basically open. So they're going to want to get the system in as clean of a state as possible, logged out cleanly, so we can take over. Typically an upgrade could take anywhere from a few hours to, over 24 hours in some cases or more. So it varies wildly, and that's why we like to do it on the weekend. We want to mention a contingency plan here too. So if it is something that's going to take us the majority of the weekend to finish, we want to, beforehand schedule a time, maybe, for example, noon on Sunday, where we say, okay, what's the state of the system? Are we up and running and good to go? Or are we still working out problems? Do we want to roll it back to the old system and try again at a later date? Those are things we have to consider. I don't think we've had to do that in a very long time. Usually things go pretty smoothly, and we've just got some post support to work out a couple of little kinks and issues here, during the next week. But so that's pretty much what to expect. We like to do it schedule some downtime. If we can over the weekend, that's ideal. But it really is up to the client and what works for them. And we'll work with you. So I think that's pretty much all we needed to really touch on as far as the live upgrade goes. Did you have anything else you wanted to add to that, John, or did you want?
I think we kind of we went over a lot of information, but there's even a lot more detail in this. But when we do the discovery process, we can get into all those details so that you're more comfortable of what's going to actually happen. I think at this point we still have a few minutes left. If you guys want to ask questions, if you just put it in your chat window, we'll try to answer those questions. If we don't have enough time and we run out and you guys have questions, you can just email us. Our email addresses are up on the screen there. And there's also a hyperlink there for a bunch of resources on our website that has everything about GP and GP upgrades. There's a really good wealth of information on the website.
Yep, and if you are interested in upgrading, I hope we didn't scare you away. We want to try to give a lot of detail here, but we don't want to try to overwhelm you. But we step you through this whole process and make it easy for you. So if you are interested in an upgrade, please reach out to us. We've got our emails up there, and we can start to put together a proposal for you. As I mentioned before, we don't charge for it for a basic proposal, as long as we don't have to dig in too deep, but we would certainly make you aware if that was the case beforehand. So we encourage you, if you are interested, please reach out, and we would be happy to discuss that with you.
Yeah, maybe we do have questions here. Okay.
Okay.
Will Microsoft be updating their knowledge base, help screens, and training videos for the 2018 edition?
Well, they update their training kind of in sections. They don't really release with recent versions, haven't been releasing an updated PDF or an official instruction manual. They kind of seem to be rolling out different blog posts that introduce new features. That's kind of been the style they've been doing lately. I don't think they've put out an instruction manual since, maybe 2013. They don't even do that anymore. So, like we said, the new versions are just new features. So when they do roll out a major new feature, they're just putting out blog posts to accompany it and explain those features. And that's pretty much how they've been approaching it as of late.
Yeah, and on the Windows, there's going to be new functionality on some of the Windows. So if you do hit the F1 key, you're going to get the information on that window. So if there's something new on that window, that information won't be in there. So you will be able to look at that and drill down into it.
All right, so this next one here, how often should we upgrade GP? That's going to depend, on your business. We can help you try to get a better idea. But basically, you just want to be in that maintenance window. You don't want to be running such an old version that Microsoft's not going to be able to help us. If you're running such an old version, they're just going to say, hey, we don't support this version anymore, so you're going to have to give them an upgrade. There's nothing we can do. So you want to make sure you're at least on a supported version. Another reason you don't want to let it get too outdated is just because of security updates in the newer versions, bug fixes. Generally, you don't want to be probably, I would say, more than 3 versions behind. I would say probably right now, if you're on 2013, it's time to upgrade. If you're on 2010, it's definitely time to upgrade. If you're on an older version like GP10, you should have upgraded probably years ago. I would say, you ideally the version you want to be on right now, the oldest version will be 2015, and you should be starting to think about an upgrade in a year or two to 2018 or the next version on the horizon. You don't want to, you don't want to let it get out of support. You want to have it be in mainstream support, and try not to even let it get into extended support, ideally.
Yeah, with the upgrades, one thing to consider is that when you do upgrade, you can skip. Each stage would have to be. You can skip one version. So what I like to say is that at a minimum, just stay one version behind. So when if you're on 2016, 2018 comes out, and the next version, if it's 20, I think the next version is probably going to be 2020, because they've been coming out with versions like every 2 years now. And then they do interim release. They do a release 2. They've done that for 2013, 2015, and 2016. So there's interim releases there as well. And then also you want to, if you go to our website and you see the new features on the different versions, you go through that and you say, hey, we could really use that new feature. So that would be a reason to upgrade. Of course, people on payroll, you definitely want to be up to date, and even if you're on an older release, you have to be at least 2015 now for payroll. You need to be patching GP so that it incorporates all the different taxes that happen.
That's in there. So the next question is, I think June wrote, we're on 2010. What's the final date for us to upgrade to the most current version? I don't think there's a final date. I mean, you could wait really 10 more years. I mean, Cal's going to support you. But again, we don't have any recourse with Microsoft if something serious happens where we need to go to the actual vendor. We're not going to be able to help you. So GP 2010 mainstream support has ended, and extended support for that version is going to end in 2010. So it's on its last leg. Okay, so you still have extended support if something serious happens, but you should definitely think about upgrading before that runs out. You want to take this next one?
Okay, the question is, what's the latest from Microsoft on Management Reporter and GP going forward? Are they slated to be phased out? Well, there's no indication of GP phasing out. There has been talk about Management Reporter. Microsoft has decided that they're not going to upgrade Management Reporter anymore. They're going to keep it at the current version, which is release 16. But there is also Microsoft has partnered with another company.
Oh, Jet Reports. Yeah, Jet Reports is
Jet Reports,
spiritual successor to it. It's a third party, but that's what they're kind of trying to.
They're working with Microsoft on Jet Reports, so that's another alternative to.
All right. Let's do like a lightning round here, Jen. It's already past 3.
Sure.
How many upgrades to 2018 have you done? Is it stable or should we wait a while? It came out in December last year, so it's been out for 8 months. It is stable. We've got about roughly 10 or so clients probably running it in production, with maybe another 10 or 12 on the horizon, either in test or with a live upgrade scheduled. So we're definitely starting to pick up some steam on 2018, and it's getting put into some serious use. When does support for 2015 end? You know what? Mainstream support for 2013 didn't even end until earlier this year. So I mean, you're probably talking about 2015 for extended support. I think for 2015, 2025, I think roughly. I'll try to look up the exact date here. We want to grab that next question.
That was the last one.
That's the last one, yeah. So let me just look it up here. So 25, mainstream support ends 2020 for 2015, and extended support ends 2025, April 2025. So, we consider 2015 to be kind of one of the current versions. So, you know, again, mainstream support's not going to end for another 2 years. Probably is about the time we would suggest upgrading. If you're on 2015, you probably should upgrade in about, I don't know, maybe about 2 years, right? A year or two when mainstream support is ending. That's typically the window you'd want to try to hit. You don't want to really try to rely on extended support if you don't have to. All right. I think that's all the questions so far. Oh, and will it still work with SalesPad? Yes. I think it was April that SalesPad came out with their confirmed compatibility version with GP 2018. So it does work. It has been tested. We have some clients using GP 2018 with SalesPad, and it is working. So thank you, everyone, for the questions. If you do have any more questions, our email addresses are on the screen. If you're interested in an upgrade, or if you have any questions about the upgrade process, please feel free to reach out to us. We would be happy to talk to you about that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
All right, have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.